What we'll do is we'll start out with an incoming write request to update LBA address 1973. We're going to update that to be a 1. This is an incoming write request from an application and a host. Next, the Flash controller looks up this LBA address in its mapping table and finds that it currently maps to block 2 cell 8. The controller then checks the contents of block 2 cell 8 and finds that it's already programmed to be a 0 and needs reprogramming back to be a 1. But the controller knows that it can't do this as an individual cell program operation. It knows that it's got to go through all of that write amplification, and it doesn't fancy all of the effort that's required to reprogram that cell. So instead, it decides to play a sleight of hand, and it marks the existing contents of this cell for deletion, and remaps LBA 1973 from block 2 cell 8 to block 50 cell 0. And block 50 is one of those blocks in its pool of hidden pre-erased flash cells. As this cell is in a pre-erased condition, all cell values are already set to 1, meaning that no write operation is required here. All that's needed to do is that remapping operation that we've already performed. And bingo, job done. We've performed the write operation without having to wade through all of the heavy lifting associated with typical write amplification. A couple of important things to note on this process. First up, and of paramount importance here, although this remapping operation might look just as complicated as the block arrays operation we're trying to avoid, it's actually way faster than having to read, update, block arrays and write full blocks. It's because this remapping operation is a metadata operation that usually occurs totally in DRAM, so it's literally like greased lightning. This kind of remapping operation that goes on, courtesy of having oodles of spare flash cells lying around, is probably the number 1 or number 2 most important feature of eMLC, as it drastically improves performance and allows your flash device to cope with intensive write workloads without suffering performance drops. Obviously, the more spare flash that you have lying around hidden away, the better your device will be able to cope with peaks in write traffic. And of course, the more spare flash that it's going to have lying around hidden from the higher layers, the more expensive the flash device is likely to be. The second point on this process is this kind of remapping goes on all of the time, and it's one of the beauties of the LBA abstraction that we've talked about. The controller here can do what the heck it wants with the mapping table without affecting the host's view of the address space or of the device. Now, on the topic of remapping, this is a good segue to mention bad block remapping. Bad block remapping is something that occurs for solid state storage as well as mechanical disk drives. And again, let's go with another set of pictures to demonstrate the concept. This time we'll demonstrate dealing with a couple of flash cells that have unexpectedly died. In our illustration here, we've got block 2 in the spotlight again, and we can see that the controller has a couple of LBA addresses mapped to cells in block 2. LBA 1031 is mapped to block 2 cell 0, and LBA 7751 is mapped to block 2 cell 6. Now, let's say that block 2 cells 0 and 6 fail, dead in the water. Instead of failing the entire device or reducing the available capacity of the device by 2 cells, the flash controller simply marks those cells as failed and remaps the logical addresses for these flash cells to free cells that are in the hidden reserved area. Again, this is all done in the background and under the radar as far as hosts are concerned. And as we mentioned, this is a technique that is not unique to solid state storage, as this is common practice in the spinning disk drive world too. Another benefit of having lots and lots of free hidden flash cells lying around. So let's recap eMLC. These hidden reserves of flash, they're really the crux of what makes eMLC enterprise grade. There's nothing different about the construction of the flash cells, no difference in the quality of materials used to construct them, no difference in the manufacturing and fabbing process, no difference in the QA process. eMLC is all about hiding away massive reserves of flash and applying clever software and firmware on top of things to make the device appear faster and more reliable. In fact, we probably shouldn't say to make it appear faster and more reliable, because the techniques that we've talked about actually do make the overall device faster and more reliable. Feel like you're being conned or ripped off because there's nothing special about the actual flash itself? Don't. You really shouldn't care as long as you get the improved performance and reliability that's advertised on the package.